Let me show you how you can use colorful clay, an extruder, a resin mold to make a beautiful and vibrant donut bead. Hi, I'm Mihaela from Learn Polymer Clay, and let's dive in. You have to properly condition the polymer clay, and for this project we are going to use blue Serenite number 1, Fimo Professional Magenta, Fimo Professional True Yellow, and Serenite Gold Metallic Clay. And after properly conditioning the clay, I've rolled the clay into tiny logs, and then I intend to put these logs together to form a larger log, and I intend to put that log inside the extruder. But first you will have to roll this log on your tile until you'll have a width that fits the extruder. And I wasn't happy with the fact that some of the logs were not long enough to go from side to side, so I had to trim the ends of the colorful log, and then I inserted a disc with an elongated rectangle shape, and then I screwed in the cap of the extruder, and you'll just have to start extruding the clay, and you'll notice that you will have a very beautiful swirl of colorful polymer clay, and you will have some colors on one side and other colors on the other side. And for this beautiful donut bead, we are going to use the side with blue, green and yellow. And I decided that it would be a good idea to use yellow polymer clay that I have previously conditioned, of course, to make the base. And I had the perfect donut bead shaped mold for the project, and this is a silicone mold that works great with resin but also with polymer clay. And you'll just have to fill the mold with polymer clay and then use the roller to roll on top of the mold, and then you'll just have to use your blade and trim off the excess clay. And I decided to make a larger hole for the bead, and so I used a round cutter to cut an opening, and then I used some pieces of the curled extruded polymer clay, and I put them in a spiraling shape, and I used the same round cutter to cut an opening in the middle. And my initial idea was to create a spiraling pattern with the extruded swirls of polymer clay. But then when I put that pattern on top of the clay, my bead was too small for this idea. So I decided to change a little bit this idea, and in fact I'm going to use small strips of this curled polymer clay piece, and then I used a round cutter to trim off part of the clay, and in fact I'm going to use thin colorful strips of clay to make a beautiful spiraling pattern on top of the donut bead. And you'll notice that in some areas you can see a little bit of the magenta line. And then I'm going to put the decorated bead inside the same mold again, once more. And you'll have to pull a little bit on the silicone sides to be able to fit the bead inside the same mold. And again I use the roller to roll on the back of the bead, and then again you'll have to use your blade and trim off the excess clay. and this is the resulting donut bead. And I felt that I wanted to add a little bit, to spice a little bit this design, and I decided to add a little bit of purple nail art glitter. Of course, this is totally optional. If you don't like to have a little bit of sparkle on your clay pieces, you can totally skip this step. And so I'm using the tip of my craft knife to put just a little bit of sparkle in some areas, but just a little bit, not too much. And then you can use parchment paper to lightly press this nail art glitter into the clay. Then when you are happy with the look of your donut beads, you can put it in the oven for 40 minutes in the preheated oven. I bake my pieces on baking paper because I don't want to have a glass-like look on the back of the pieces if I would bake them directly on my tile. You have to let the clay cool down, and it's up to you if you want to finish this project by applying resin. Normally you don't have to protect polymer clay. If you decided to add some nail art glitter, you might want to use varnish to protect the glitter. But if you want a beautiful faux glass, faux porcelain effect for your donut bead, I think UV resin and resin in general is the best idea to get such a beautiful effect, to have shiny beads. I like to have shiny beads. So I've used a brush and I applied a thin layer of UV resin, and then I used a heat gun to remove any air bubbles, and you'll just have to use the UV lamp or the sun, and the UVs from the sun. But in case you are using the UV light, you have to put your piece under the UV light for 2 consecutive minutes. And then I decided to use 21 gauge gold colored wire to make a system that would allow us to make a system to attach a crystal bead, a beautiful sparkling crystal bead. And I'm going to use the same idea to attach metal frame to turn this design into a pendant, into a beautiful pendant. So I've used round nose pliers to make a loop. I inserted the crystal bead inside the loop, and then I twisted one end of the wire around the base. And so I've used round nose pliers to make a loop, and I'm making this loop towards one end of the wire. Then I inserted a crystal bead inside the loop, and I used the shorter end that I twisted around the wire, and then I put the longer wire piece through the bead, and I decided to put some bluish, greenish green crystal beads on the wire, and then I put the wire through the bead, and then I've just wrapped the wire on top of the part where I wrapped the shorter part of the wire. And I'm going to do the same on the upper part because I want to attach this donut bead to a metal element, to a square metal element. So I'm making a round loop with the wire towards the end of the wire piece, and then I put the metal element inside the round loop, and I trimmed off the excess. I put 2 green crystal beads on the wire, and then I just inserted the wire through the opening of the donut bead, and coming from the back I am just going to wrap the wire on top of the previous wrapping made with the shorter end of the wire. This is the finished pendant, and I hope that you like this idea, and I hope that you are inspired to make beautiful pendants using polymer clay. I encourage you to check out my other tutorials and stay tuned for more inspiration for work with polymer clay.